My name is Edward. I'm currently 74 years old. I retired about 10 years ago, but I was a reporter for about 40. The events I'm about to tell you about took place in late 1975. At the time, I was 33. I had just been working my way up in my field, starting to feel like a respected journalist. I had been given a scoop about the horrendous conditions that the mentally ill people were apparently living in at our local lunatic asylum. I thought this was the perfect breakout story. I couldn't wait to get started. I called up the asylum's management and got nothing but hang-ups. This frustrated me so much. I decided to just grab a camera and go there. I got there at about 11 AM. It was basically deserted. I assumed the patients didn't get much exposure to the outside world. My camera was as small as I could get it at the time, which wasn't very small, but I managed to conceal it in my bag. I came up to a pair of huge doors. I expected them to be locked, but they weren't even closed properly, so I helped myself. I originally planned to find someone and charm my way inside, but since I wasn't finding anyone, and I was a young journalist striving for a good story, I was doing it any way I could. Once I got in the halls, I threw out my camera and started taking photos. There was absolutely no people there at this point. The huge halls had a creepy echo. I was walking around as careful as I could for about 20 minutes without finding a single person. This asylum was massive. It could house thousands of people, yet it seemed 99% of it was empty. Eventually I came across a door. I could hear voices, but it just sounded like a bunch of yelling and screaming. I cracked the door and saw probably 300 people crammed into a tiny room. From the looks of it, that's where they'd been all day and where they'd be for the rest of it. The smell was horrendous. They clearly just went to the toilet wherever they were. Most of them didn't even have any clothes on and were just lying on the ground muttering. All I could see were 3 carers currently on duty. 3. Taking care of 300 mentally ill patients. I took as many photos as I could. As I was doing this, I saw something race across the hallway in my peripheral vision. I quickly looked, and I saw a head poking around a corner. She was a girl, and clearly a patient. I walked over to her. She threw herself on the floor in fear and huddled against the wall. "Hey," I said. "What's your name?" She didn't respond. She looked very frightened. Her hair was an absolute mess. It had grown down to about her hips. She was wearing a big dirty white top as a dress and nothing else. I asked a few questions, getting no response. I took a few pictures. She seemed terrified of me. After getting no responses, I decided to leave her be. I started to walk away when I heard her yelp, "Can you help me?" That broke my heart. I quickly walked back to her. "What do you need help from?" I said. "Hell," she replied. "You're afraid of hell?" I asked. "This place is hell," she said. Her answer shocked me. It made me feel really sad. "What's your name?" I asked. "Anna," she replied. "Hi, Anna. I'm Edward," I said. Just as I was about to ask her more questions, a man yelled, "Hey, who are you?" I turned around and saw a man, evidently some kind of management of the asylum. "You're trespassing. I'm calling the police." Anna started yelling and crying hysterically. "This asylum is a travesty," I yelled. "I'll have it shut down." The next thing I knew, I was grabbed by a beast of a man, and he roughly escorted me away. He threw me out the front doors, ripped the camera out of my hands, and slammed the door. I banged on that door for about 10 minutes. That son of a bitch stole my camera. It had all my evidence on it, but there was nothing I could do. Calling the police would result in me getting charged. I had to just go home. I did go to the police about the asylum though. I tried to tell them about the disgusting environment that the patients were living in. They couldn't care less. In fact, everyone I told couldn't care less. They were just happy the mentally ill were out of the community and out of their way. I think I tried to get back in that asylum at least 15 times over the next year or so. But not only did they lock every door and window in the entire asylum now, but they built a huge fence around the entire premises. They clearly saw me as a threat. Since they took my camera and I had no evidence, I couldn't even do a story. I had no choice but to forget about it. The rest of my career I wondered about the asylum and Anna. In 1997, I was overjoyed when that abomination of a place shut its doors for the last time. I thought about trying to research Anna, but it would be impossible with nothing but a first name. All I could do is cling to the hope that she somehow got out and had a life. The whole building is set for demolition this year. About 2 weeks ago, I decided to go have a look, since I had not done it since that day 41 years ago. Much of the fence surrounding the asylum had been torn away. It was more than easy to get through. The place, although still massive, it was clear that it was barely standing. A portion of it had completely caved in. The entire first floor was boarded up, stopping any people from going in. I managed to find a hole that someone else had taken the time to make. I crawled through. Not bad for a man with a walking stick. The inside was covered in graffiti. I had never felt something more eerie. I pulled out my phone to use as a flashlight and began to investigate. It was very creepy. I wandered around for near an hour, doing my best to keep track of where I was, as it would be very easy to get lost. All of a sudden, the environment around me came together. It clicked. This was the hall I stood 41 years ago. I turned to see 2 massive doors at the end of the hallway. They were both now boarded shut. This might sound crazy, but I swear of the very small recollection I had of my experience in 1975, at this point I now remembered it all. The entire event came back to me. It was like it was being fed to me. Now all I could see in my head was Anna's face. It's all I could think of. It was like it was being burnt into my brain. That was until the feeling of my body numbing from freezing temperatures that had come out of nowhere snapped me out of it. Now I was scared. As I was shining my phone around, trying to see everything, something caught my eye. It was lying on the side of the hall. I started to slowly approach it. As I did, the sound of a woman whimpering filled the hall. And it wasn't me, although I had never been so terrified. I continued to get closer. I was now about 10 feet away, and then I realized it was Anna, not a day older from when I saw her in 1975. I was in disbelief. She was sitting, holding her legs, with her head snapped to her shoulder in the most horrifying way. I stood there, unable to move. There was a silence. Then she said,
"Help."
and screamed. I was thrown backwards by my own fright. I watched as Anna's face warped. It was like she was a painting that had just been smudged. Then out of nowhere, she was torn through the floor. It looked agonizing. She screamed. Then she was gone. Her screams continued to echo through the halls and then faded away. I sprinted out of that building and never returned. That was the most horrifying moment of my life. Although I hate thinking that Anna is suffering. That's if that was even her. The sickening history of those buildings and ones like it would create a breeding ground for demonic entities to feed on lost souls that were once patients. Calling that building hell now would not be an exaggeration.